Hello, and welcome to the Kelcast, the Hearthstone Arena podcast, where we try to get better without cursing. I'm Keladar, a longtime Infinite Arena leaderboard player and streamer on Twitch. Joining me is my co-host, another Arena leaderboard player, playable. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Keladar, that's Keludar, on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter. All right, Kellen, what are we looking at this week?
Oh, this week we are talking about curves, baby. You know that thing at the bottom of your draft, that thing, that little bar graph that's going on, that curve. That's what we're going to get into.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, that little thing you're talking about, people always mention it because I have it covered. I never look at that thing. I don't look at the graph. I never look at the graph. I look at my cards. I've never, I don't even look at it, but it's just funny. So one thing I want to bring up before we go into the curve thing here is I want to talk about a little bit about Hearthstone news for Arena. So last week I talked about with Judge and Veritas that I was anticipating, based on some reports that I was getting, that the Watchpost would be nerfed and banned from Arena, and also I anticipated that micro adjustments would happen, but I wasn't certain.
And my God, were you right? You were so right.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you out there to Zeddy for giving the news. So I don't know who he knows, but he knows somebody apparently. So anyway, so what happened was the two and 3 mana Watchpost were nerfed to lose a health, and also they were actually banned completely from the Arena. And the other thing that happened was micro adjustments. Let me talk about the Watchpost first. So there's a lot of, I actually was a little bit surprised by this. I'm not 100% surprised, but because I understand the sentiment, but there's a lot of higher level players that they don't really like that cards are just banned outright. One thing in a lot of cases is they can be discovered anyway. Now, Watchpost won't be able to be discovered for the most part, but regardless, a lot of people think, well, we don't want to just ban every problem card out there. That's not really healthy. But unfortunately, one of the issues is that nerfs for Arena do not exist. So the only time we get nerfs for cards that are problems if they're also a problem in constructed. But I'm kind of on the fence about this. I will say that from a standpoint of my own personal play, that I wouldn't have minded the Watchpost staying in the Arena with the nerfs that were given. But on the other hand, there were a lot of people that literally just stopped playing because of it, which I can understand, because they're cards that when they come down, they just kind of feel real bad. Sorry. They just feel...
I was agreeing. I'm just one of those people. I just did not enjoy playing against them or with them. It just felt, it wasn't even that they were overpowered by that much. It just felt unfun. I felt like my opponents were not allowing me to play the game.
Yeah. And the thing is it feels bad when cards even, we'll talk a little bit about Ysera, those kind of cards come down. But those cards are not so early on. Watchpost was a card that on turn 3 would come down. And sometimes, now I actually didn't really experience a game where I completely lost because it came down, because I drafted around it. And that's where I think a lot of the higher level players are well, you can do things to stop it, which is true. But I think for the health of the player base and for players that are not in the 6+ win range, those type of players, I think I agree with the decision on a health standpoint, based on I don't want people to get Watchpost on coin 2 and just never play Arena again, because truthfully, if you weren't really into Arena and that was your experience and first impression, I could see people just leaving. So I don't want that to be the case. So anyway, I think I do agree with the decision, though I will admit that I wouldn't have been against them staying in the state of being nerfed, but whatever. So that's just where we're at with that. The other thing that happened was micro adjustments.
Ooh, baby.
And man, this is what I kept saying. Demon Hunter obviously was a bit of an outlier and a problem, and Druid was really sad, and that made me really sad. I think it's part of the reason I love the micro so much, is I love Druid. The good news is that this pretty much always happens. The win rates have come between about 4 to 5%, which is pretty common. I've actually seen micro adjustments where it brought all 10 classes within 3.5. That's the best it can get. But, the other thing I really like about it is they didn't, a lot of times the top class will get tanked down to go from 55 or 56 or whatever it is, and they'll tank it down to 45 or 40%, and they didn't drop all the way. So Demon Hunter was top at 56% or so. It's dropped down now to about 48.5 or so, or something in that range.
Thank goodness. Yeah, it's not the best class anymore, but it's not unplayable either.
Right, and the big thing to take away from this is all the classes are playable. Paladins get in kind of a rough spot because the classes that are on top really counter them, which makes it really difficult for them. But frankly, I don't think many people care when like Priest and Paladin are near the bottom.
No,
They're
no
kind
one's
of
mad
annoying
about that
classes.
ever. Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. I mean, I'm not going to give you I'm not going to give a long. We'll talk about the best classes and maybe some like surprise classes, like maybe next week or the week after. I'll tell you if you're just looking for general, like, hey, what do I do? I want to play some classes. I think that Rogue and Warlock and Warrior and even Shaman and Druid are all really fun to play right now.
They are.
I don't know if they're like the best or whatever, but
it doesn't matter. They're fun to play. They're solid. They're above average, and it's nice to play that type of strategy where you get to curve out, you get to play good cards, good spells. You're not stuck with bad, terrible cards in your deck or just overpowered craziness. You're just playing Hearthstone Arena when you play those classes.
And I really like I hope that Blizzard. I want to give Blizzard a little bit of a bump, a fist bump because we shit talk them a lot, but the truth is that the community was outraged about the Watchpost. Now, I know that's not everybody's opinion, but generally most players were upset. And they did respond. They removed them. And they also micro adjust. I've been saying if they could just micro adjust like 2 or 3 weeks after the meta comes out, it would just improve the arena experience so much, because once the adjustments happen like this, the meta is so healthy. Like everybody has a chance. You can even take bad decks and get deep, go deep with bad decks and stuff. And it's a good place to be in arena because you feel like you don't see Demon Hunter against like your favorite class and be like, well, I'm gonna hate myself if I don't take Demon Hunter because it's the only way I can get 12 wins.
Right.
You're like, it's a terrible feeling. So it feels so much better right now, and that's a great place. So anyway, let's move on. That's the news.
Yeah, so I want to transition that exact conversation into how this is a continuation of what we talked about 2 weeks ago about how to evaluate a new meta, but we're going to talk about how to build a curve. Ooh. And one of the most important things that we do in Hearthstone is evaluate our own deck outside of the matchups that we're going to face, right? Because when you're playing a new deck or drafting a new deck, you don't know what decks you're going to play against. If the meta is super defined and you know that 40% of your matchups are Priest or whatever, then maybe it's different. But in a first meta or in this tumultuous time that we're in right now where there's a lot of different options and they're micro adjusting and they're trying to figure things out and classes are pretty equivalent and you're not really sure what's going on, the best thing you can do to draft a good deck is draft a good curve. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to spend your mana, because the point of drafting a curve is to create a deck that allows you to spend the most amount of mana per turn. One of the secrets to Hearthstone that I think everybody kind of knows but doesn't quite, it's not always solidified in specific words, is the player that spends the most mana is the most likely to win the game. Would you agree with that, Kel?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we miss out on is when we're playing Hearthstone, we take the thought process of these best cards, these, it's always this, and as you've said many times in the past, it's never always, but there's these cards we think of as you always pick this, you have to do this, you do this every time, and that's true, but there's something that's even beyond that, and it's the person that spends the most amount of mana is going to win the game the most often. There are a few cards that break that: Cycle of Hatred, Flame Strike, Expendable Performers, cards that are on such a high power level that they break this mana parity situation. But in almost every game you play, in 85% of the games you play at least, the person who spends the most mana will win. So how do you apply that specific piece of information to your draft? And I think the most important way you can apply that is to draft a deck that allows you to spend the most amount of mana per turn and as we say, burn the least amount of mana or waste the least amount of mana. And that starts as early as turn 1. I think one of the reasons that priests were so powerful a week ago is because they had such high access to 1 mana cards that were powerful, like Renew and Draconic Studies. So on turn 1 or on any turn where they burnt a mana, instead they could spend 1 mana and gain an additional value for the future turns or whatever. So I want to talk about what can you do to draft a deck that allows you to spend the most mana. What can you tell me about that, Kel? Like how do I do that? How do I draft a deck that allows me to spend the most amount of mana?
Well, one of the things that it entails is the odds. So like for me, like, you know, when we look at like, you know, we talk about, oh, we want to have like 6 2 drops and 5 3 drops and maybe a little bit less. And you want, if you think about it, as you go up on the curve, you draft less of that mana cost. And the main reason for that is you have to think about the odds, right? So like you want to make sure there's no chance that you don't play your mana on turn 1, 2, or 3. So you might draft more 2s or 3s than you would draft 4s or 5s, because by the time you get to turn 4 or 5, you've been able to draw more cards. So that's one of the aspects of it that I think is important to understand, and that's why, you know, we talk about different types of mana curves based on the meta. You know, is it like this meta, is it important that I like have to hit turn 1? Or is it just important that by turn 3, like I hit a really strong minion, you know, like that can deal with things. So I think that's important to think about, is the amount of 2s, 3s, or whatever that you want to draft.
Yeah, there was a really cool. I remember this because I was walking through a grocery store listening to the Grinning Goat podcast. This was in about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay. Wow.
And I know but they were talking about, is this a 3-drop meta or a 2-drop meta? And that was a big thing back in classic days because cards were less powerful. So River Crocolisk versus a 3-mana 3/4 or versus Spider Tank was a real conversation. Like, do I want more River Crocs or do I want more Spider Tanks? Because if you're in a meta where 3-drops are more important, then you want more River Crocs. But if you're in a meta where 2-drops are more important, you want more Spider Tanks, because Spider Tanks kill 2-drops. And if 3-drops kind of suck, then you want more 2-drops because they can beat 3-drops. So it's kind of it depends on what cards are good. Right now, I would say there are more 2-drops that are good because most of the classes have 2-mana 2/3s, and Peon's popular. There's a lot of just generic. The Frenzied Crocodile is popular. A lot of 2-mana 2/3s exist. So right now, I would say it's a 3-drop meta because I want to go coin 3 into 3. Specifically, I want to play Initiates on turn 2 and turn 3.
What is that? Is that the Sunwell that you like? The 4.5-star
card? I know. I'm not quite there, but I'm getting closer. It is better than I thought. It is so good.
Actually, what's funny is it's actually better than I thought. Like a little bit. Like I'm even a little bit surprised. But yeah, I think it's important to really. The other thing on kind of like tagging on what you're saying before we get off of this subject is I want to mention that the other thing is also remembering when you're drafting is that like right now there is a gluttonous amount of 3-drops. So like you can pretty much end up with like, let's say your goal with whatever class you're playing is to get 5 or 6 3-drops that are strong. I mean, you can do that without actually trying. And so it becomes interesting because you actually have to be careful that you don't overdraft the best 3-drops over and over again so you get too many. So these are the kind of things that as you have experience and you draft in the meta, I mean, if you want to be a super number cruncher and study how many of each one, I don't do it. Like, I know that the Grinning Goat and stuff, like they evaluate, like, and Tarot and stuff, like they evaluate like the amount of this and this. I don't go that deep. I just kind of feel it out. And I know that like I can get like 4 or 5 3-drops without trying. So like I might go ahead.
Cal, what's the best class in a meta that's 3-drop focused? Just the best class, the one that can use its hero power on turn 2 without any disadvantage.
Well, I mean, Demon Hunter can do it pretty well because they have one. No,
but I'm talking about the class that can use their turn 2 to just straight up use.
Oh, you mean Rogue?
I mean Rogue.
Oh, sorry. I get you. Sorry, yes, I got you.
Yeah. So what's the best class right now according to statistics?
It is Rogue.
So that tells us it's probably a 3-drop meta, and that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing we can look at is what allows you to spend your mana the best. Right now, it appears that decks that use 3-drops, because it's a 3-drop dominant meta with Wasteland, Scorpion, Sunwell Initiate, and there's a number of others, Pack Kodo, and all these other cards. There's a lot of great 3-drops right now, and the 2-drops are generally generic outside of Rogue. So it looks like if Rogue is the top class, it's probably a 3-drop meta, and the classes that can spend their mana the best are the classes that have 3-drops and the ability to spend 2 mana on their hero power or in another way. So I think it's very obvious that it's a 3-drop meta because Rogue is the best class at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rogue has the opportunity to spend more mana than anybody else. So what can you do in a meta that is a 3-drop meta? So let's just go more specific on this specific meta that we still don't know enough about. It's brand new. But what cards are good in 3-drop metas outside of all the dominant 3-drop metas? I would argue that the best cards in 3-drop metas are 1-drops, because 1-drops allow you to play a card on 1, coin a 3, and then play a 3, or alternatively play a 2, a 3, and a 3 and a 1, or it just fits into a meta better. Like you're able to, as an odd mana cost, you're able to fit that little 1-drop in alongside your 3-drops more often. So like Og Merchants are great. Argent Squire's fantastic. Brain Freeze is better than it's ever been before. Like all these little 1-drop spells are fantastic. Draconic Studies was amazing before they nerfed Priest, right?
Yeah.
Like all these 1-mana spells are doing well. All these 1-mana minions are doing well. And all these 3-drops that are just dominating the meta are complemented by these 1-mana spells.
I think we can actually tag off of the study cards from Scholomance to kind of explain why mana is so important, because the study cards specifically, like some people, I've heard people be like, man, I mean, they obviously know they're strong because you can discover, but why they're even stronger is even if you play them on turn 1, like let's say you play a Carrion Studies on 1, right? You have so much flexibility with that mana because you're basically banking the mana. So you're not wasting the mana. You're actually saving the mana for even a potentially stronger turn to use that 1 mana, like on turn 4, where you can play like you might be able to play like a Teacher's Pet on turn 4, or play a Savannah Highmane on turn 5, or a Protodrake on turn 7. Like those things are huge swings. Like they have major impacts on the game. So like I think it's a great card to look at. Those are great cards to look at to kind of bring home your point of why not wasting your mana and spending it appropriately is so strong,
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the I think Nature Studies actually loses some value, which one of the best Druid cards, right?
Right.
The only reason one of the big reasons that card was so good is it can discover cards like Landscaping, like the 2-mana 1 double 1/2 spell from the new set, like Arbor Up, because Nature Studies isn't really a spell discoverer. It can be a spell discoverer, but it also can discover minions, because many Druid spells discover spells that many Druid spells create minions.
Right.
So, though I think that's why the Warrior, the Priest, and the the Demon Hunter, actually all the ones that can discover minions are so good, is that even if they're not a card you're going to play that turn, it allows you to basically preserve a mana that you would not otherwise be able to spend that turn.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting off of this specific area, how do you draft a deck to spend more mana than your opponent?
I mean, really, you just make sure that you draft, kind of like, I guess I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but like I was saying earlier, you have to make sure you draft an appropriate amount of each mana cost to make sure that you have the highest percentage chance to not miss a curve drop.
So how would you say you do that? So like I would say that you would if you have 4 2-drops and you're offered another 2-drop, even if it's a great 2-drop, but you're also offered so this, like let's say it's pick 4 in the draft. Let's go more specific. It's pick 4 in the draft. You've been offered 2 good 2-drops and a good 3-drop. So like your deck is going smoothly. You have a good curve so far. Right. You have 2 2s and a 3, and you're offered a 6-drop and a 2-drop. And the 2-drop is a slightly better card overall than the 6-drop. What do you do in that situation?
It depends on the class, and there's a couple obviously situational things to think about, but I would, knowing that it's not difficult to get 2s and 3s right now, I mean, I would, if it's a kind of a general 6-drop, like if, I probably would go for the 6-drop at that point, because I know that there's still a lot of time left. I'm already, you're trying to, as you go through the draft, you're trying to hit the highest percentage chance that you're going to fill the curve. I mean, obviously you have to know what you want as a curve, like how many of each, but yeah, I would, you might you start to change what you value as your curve fills in. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're always trying to draft for what you're left with, right? Like you
Yeah.
have, I think a lot of people get into this thing of what do I have right now, and how does this one card fit into what I want to take, versus what do I have right now, and what do I want to take in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if I had 3 bad 2 drops and a good 6 drop, and I'm offered a good 2 drop,
Mm-hmm.
there's actually a chance I'll take that good 2 drop because I want to fill that up. And if I take one good 2 drop, I'm kind of done on 2 drops. Now I can take a 3 and a 4 and a 5. I don't have to take a medium 2 drop anymore.
Right.
So the quality of the cards at each spot on your curve matters too. Like you need
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing I talk about, and sometimes I think viewers that are not as experienced get confused by this, but like when my personal style of, and it's kind of a guesstimation, but like let's say if I draft 2 3-mana 3/3s, and let's just say they're general cards, like they don't really have an impact. They're not good 3/3s. They're just 3/3s. Like maybe
Let's just say Earthen Ring Farseer.
yeah. So they're just kind of whatever. Like at that point, like if I'm counting how many 3-drops I have, in my head trying to get to, like, let's say I'm trying to get to 5 good 3-drops, I might count those 2 3-drops as 1 3-drop because or if it's a card that's not a curve 3, like it's a card that it's 3 mana, but it's not something you want to play on 3.
Yeah.
I don't count.
Like it's a spell or something.
Yeah.
So
and
has
that's
an effect, but
yeah, and that's really important because like when we're talking about what amount of 2s and 3s you want in your deck, it has to be like you want to hit 5 3-drops that you can play on 3, or 6 2-drops that you can play on 2. If it's just like a 2-mana spell, but it's reactionary, right? That's why like a lot of good players will not hold like, well, Frostbolt doesn't exist, but you know what I'm saying? Like cards like that, spells in your hand. I rarely,
Drain Soul, yeah. Sure.
Unless my deck is really slow and I'm really worried because maybe it's a faster class. Like there are situations where I will hold reactionary cards, but I don't typically, because if they don't play what I need to get my mana spent, then I am actually losing. You know what I mean?
Yes. So I think that's another. So we've talked about drafting, but in playing the game, you have to analyze this too. And you were just talking about that. For example, if your opponent plays a River Crocolisk on turn 2, I'm just keep using that because it's the most generic.
Sure.
And I'm playing Warlock, and I have a 2-drop that just a general 2-drop and a Drain Soul in my hand. I should sometimes, and almost always, if I don't have another like let's say I have another 2-drop 2 and no turn 4 play.
Right.
I should probably Drain Soul that 2/3 on turn 2 so that on turn 4 I can play 2/2-drops and have a curve.
Right.
Because if I just play my River Crocolisk and we have 2/2/3s facing off against each other, on turn 4 there's no guarantee that I'll be able to Drain Soul their minion, and I'll be stuck with 2 mana that's just burnt.
And you're also going to
hero power,
and you're also potentially going to be stuck with his 2 damage still on the board that can test your other cards.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, that's not good either. This is really good stuff. I like this discussion. It's cool.
Yeah. So spending your mana in a way that allows you to spend your mana later is really important. Yeah. So when you look at your curve, like I said right at the beginning of the show, that beautiful little orange bar graph at the bottom, while it explains a vaguely what your deck can do on each turn, it doesn't give you an accurate depiction that explains how the games are going to go. If I have I'm just going to keep using Warlock because it has Drain Soul. If I have a Warlock deck and it has 3 Drain Souls and 2 2-drops that are like 2 River Crocolisks, that deck does not have a 2-drop. That deck has 2 2-drops, and that's it.
Exactly.
Drain Soul is not guaranteed to be a good 2-drop, especially if you're on the play. Yeah. So you're actually not doing very well on 2-drops in those situations. So I think I'm going to kind of put it into a little bow here.
Yeah.
But it's important to have cards that you can play at each spot on the curve. It's important that you have cards that can fill the gaps where you would normally lose mana. So things like the studies cards or small mana spells. And it's important to have cards. It's important to draft cards that fit in the early game and the late game and allow you to play spells or minions on every turn of the game.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very important. Curve is, Again, it changes from meta to meta, like the amount of what you want. Sometimes I draft where I kind of don't really have a strong mid game. Sometimes I'm drafting where I have a lot of good fives, and it just depends. But it is very important, even if you don't understand that aspect of the meta. It's really important to understand what we've been talking about with that, like certain cards like Drain Soul, like we've been saying, like is not a mana. It doesn't fill your curve early. Because it's not guaranteed. You want to put as much guarantee in your deck that you can play curve cards that you as you can. That's very, very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I have on curve. I'd love to answer more questions. If anybody has any questions about drafting curve or how to fill your curve or what counts as a curve card versus what counts as a curve filler, like I'd love to get at that. So just send us a text. No, send us a tweet. Tweet at Kelladar. Tell him your questions.
Talk to me. I hate to throw in one last thing, but I did think of one thing that's also pretty interesting, is I was thinking about this example for a while and it just didn't really quite fit the conversation. But one of the reasons when we talk about value and when we evaluate value in cards, mana efficiency is really important. So I want to bring up Imp Swarm, I think is what it's called, right?
Yes, yes.
So I just had a game where it came very evident. I had discovered a cascading, whatever that's called, cascading disaster, the warlock card that, and it just, I was able to play play cascading, remove his board, drop down three twos, and also like drop a board, and the game was just literally over. And the reason is that 2 mana that I played was cheating. Like that was cheating mana. Like that's why like those rank cards are really strong. But there's cards out there that are usually the top cards that are basically cheating your mana, which is basically you are getting way more out of your mana than you really should be at that mana cost. Druid of the Plains is a great example. There's so many out there now because the power levels are high.
Cycle of Hatred, Flame Strike, Expendable Performers. Yeah, a lot of
when you can
more expensive you are, the more likely it is. But yeah,
when you can play a Flame Strike with Cycle and also put down 5 3/3s, which is basically like 14 mana of stats or some craziness. I'm not guessing, but you're
beating the mana expectancy.
And so figuring those kind of little tricks out is really important. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's another level of being able to evaluate like value in your decks and also like your mana efficiency, because you're able to cheat and do things that you should not be allowed to do on 7-8 mana or whatever it is. So
absolutely.
All right, well that's gonna do it for the 12th episode of the Kelcast. Remember that you can join us every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern here live on Twitch on my channel. Or you can download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Every Monday, you can search The Kelcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or any Stitcher, iHeartRadio. That's all there, Spotify. Make sure you can also find me on Twitch where I stream from Monday to Saturday, starting at 7 a.m. Eastern until around lunchtime. And you also, like I said, you can, if you want to watch the visual level, like the visual way of the podcast, you can, go to YouTube and look at it there. So either place you want to go. You can also find me on Twitter and stuff for news on the podcast. Make sure to tune in next week where we're going to talk about the top 5 classes of the new micro-adjusted meta.
I cannot wait for that. I'm hoping Hunter creeps in so bad. They're close. I really am hoping they creep in.
Well, remember, we're going to give our top 5 classes. HS Replay might be HS Replay might not say they're not, but we'll see what we actually think because we'll see. Well, we might be able to sneak it in there.
Okay.
Want to give thanks to John Laux for the music used in the episode, for the intro and the outros, and also thanks. You can find a link to all of our contributors in the show notes. This has been the Kelcast. See you next week.
Okay, I need to say that I just thank God the fucking Watchposts are gone. Holy shit, I fucking hate those fucking stupid ass fucking cards. Oh my God! Fuck that fucking shit.
Man, it must be so bad. Sorry. We're watch posting twice. We're. This is the second episode where we're doing this.
Oh, I'm so fucking exhausted of that fucking bullshit. We just spent an episode talking about how to play cards that cost mana. Well, guess what? When you pay 3 mana for a 3/5 and you get 4 fucking 4/4s out of it for no fucking mana, fuck that fucking bullshit. That's fucking stupid. It beats every curve conversation you've ever talked about. It's so fucking dumb. I am so sorry for all the bleeps. I just
Oh
cannot.
man, Kellen, you're really gonna make me work. I'm gonna have to be spending all my whole day tomorrow bleeping all this shit.
I am just so glad they're gone. I can finally jump back in and enjoy the meta again and relax and not freak the out and have my anxiety. I go to the roof when my opponent goes turn too far, watch post, turn too. Oh, Jesus. Or I just, thank God. That's all I'm saying. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I'm so sorry for all the cursing. I just, oh my God, that was the worst fucking 2 weeks of my goddamn fucking Hearthstone life. Okay.
All right. That's good. We did it.
Okay.
We're doing this for 3 hours now.
So sorry.
It's okay. It's worth it.
Bye.
It's what the viewers want. Bye. Oh, shit.
Jesus, I hated those fucking cards. God damn it, that was annoying.